Marcus walked through the streets of his neighborhood with the usual mixture of exhaustion and hope. In his step school had been tough that day, and his mom had called him again, asking about the bills. He tried his best to reassure her that things would get better, but deep down, he knew the weight of their struggles was growing heavier. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the cracked pavement. As he turned the corner toward the alley that led home, he noticed something unusual: a sleek black car parked by the side of the road. It gleamed under the sunlight, its curves sharp and shiny, like something out of a dream. Marcus didn't see cars like that often in his neighborhood. Most vehicles here were old, beat up, or barely running, but this one looked brand new, expensive. He stopped in his tracks, wondering if it was one of those cars that people flashed in front of others just to show off. The driver, a man in a sharp suit, stood beside it, looking frustrated as he fumbled with the tire jack. Marcus hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach the man. What if he was some rich guy who wouldn't even want help from a kid like him? But the sound of the man cursing under his breath and the sight of his struggle with the jack made Marcus move. Without thinking, he cleared his throat and walked over. "Hey man, need some help?" The man looked up, surprised at first, and then nodded gratefully. "Yeah, this thing just won't budge. I'm no good with cars." Marcus smiled, a little more confident now. "I can help you with that. Just give me a minute." He crouched down and examined the flat tire. He wasn't sure how much time he had, but he knew how to change a tire. His older brother had taught him back when he was still around before things fell apart for the family. Marcus had to learn how to do things himself. To help his mom with whatever was broken or needed fixing, it wasn't a big deal, and he felt a bit proud of his skills as he worked with quick precision. The man watched him, curiously impressed by his expertise. "You sure know what you're doing," the man said, his voice sounding both amazed and relieved. Marcus shrugged. "Nah, just something I picked up from around here." He tightened the lug nuts and finally finished replacing the tire, standing up with a small grin. "That ought to do it. You're all set." The man stared at him for a moment, his eyes widening with something like disbelief. He seemed to be processing what just happened. Marcus stood there awkwardly, unsure if the man was about to ask for a payment or thank him in a way that made him feel small. Instead, the man reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. "Here," he said, "take this. If you ever need anything or just want to talk, you got some skills, kid. I'd be happy to help you out." Marcus looked down at the card in his hand. It was simple but professional looking. Ethan Parker, the name read with a phone number below. Marcus didn't know what to make of it. His gut told him that the guy was just being polite, but part of him wondered if this was his big break. What if this card meant something? What if this was the chance he needed to get out of here? He hesitated, but then tucked the card into his pocket. "Thanks, man, I appreciate it," he said, nodding before turning and walking away, not sure if he'd ever see the man again. But the encounter left something behind, a spark of curiosity, something new to think about. A few days passed, and Marcus nearly forgot about the card tucked in his pocket. Life had a way of pulling him back into the grind: school, chores, and helping his mom around the house. But late one evening, as he sat at the kitchen table working on his homework, his phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, not expecting anything important. But when he saw the unfamiliar number on the screen, his heart skipped a beat. He hesitated, unsure whether to answer or let it go to voicemail. With a deep breath, he swiped to answer. "Hello. Is this Marcus?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yeah, this is him," Marcus replied, his voice a little shaky. He felt a twinge of unease. He wasn't used to getting calls from people he didn't know. "This is Ethan Parker," the man from the car said. Marcus's pulse quickened, and he had to remind himself to breathe. "Ethan Parker, the millionaire, the entrepreneur. I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to follow up on our brief meeting the other day. I've been thinking about what you said and your skills. I was wondering if you'd be open to meeting for a coffee sometime. I think we could have an interesting conversation." Marcus felt a rush of confusion and excitement. Ethan Parker was calling him? The guy was a big shot in the business world. Did he really want to meet with him? Was this a joke? Sure, Marcus managed, trying to sound composed, even though his mind was racing. When and where? How about tomorrow afternoon at 2? There's a cafe downtown I like. I'll text you the address. After the call ended, Marcus sat in silence for a moment, still processing what had just happened. He didn't know what Ethan wanted, but something inside told him he couldn't ignore this chance. Maybe it was his curiosity, or maybe it was just the idea of doing something different for once. The next day, Marcus put on his best clothes, his only clean shirt and a pair of jeans that were a little too tight, and caught the bus downtown. He tried to focus on what was ahead, but his nerves kept getting the best of him. What was this meeting about? Was Ethan just being polite? Or was there something he saw in Marcus that he wasn't seeing in himself? When he arrived at the cafe, he spotted Ethan sitting by the window, sipping on a coffee. The man looked just as polished and composed as the last time Marcus had seen him, but this time there was a different energy. Ethan's smile was welcoming, and he waved Marcus over. "Hey there, Marcus," Ethan said, standing up to shake his hand. "Glad you could make it." Marcus sat down, feeling out of place, but Ethan didn't seem to notice. They started talking casually at first, about the weather, about the city, and about Marcus' day-to-day life. But then Ethan shifted the conversation. "So tell me," he said, leaning in slightly, "what's your story? What are you passionate about?" Marcus was taken off guard. No one had ever asked him that before, not seriously anyway. He fumbled with his words at first, but as he spoke, something clicked. He told Ethan about how he helped his mom at home, how he loved fixing things, how he was always tinkering with old gadgets and electronics. He told him about how he dreamed of making something more of himself, but wasn't sure how to get there. Ethan listened intently, nodding along as if every word mattered. When Marcus finished, Ethan sat back in his chair and smiled. "You got a lot of potential, Marcus. More than you realize," he said, his voice steady but encouraging. "I've seen a lot of people come through my company, but not many have the kind of determination and drive you do. I want to help you build on that. I'd like to offer you an internship, just a start, but something that could open doors for you." Marcus blinked, unsure if he had heard him right. "An internship? With someone like Ethan Parker? You serious?" Marcus asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. "Absolutely," Ethan said, his smile widening. "I see something in you, Marcus. If you're willing to learn and work hard, I think you could go far. What do you think?" Marcus didn't know what to say. His mind raced, but his heart was already beating faster in excitement. This wasn't just some random opportunity. This was a real chance to change everything. A chance to escape the cycle he had been stuck in for so long. "Yeah," Marcus said finally, his voice full of determination. "I'm in." Ethan smiled. "Good decision. You won't regret it." As Marcus left the cafe, he felt a sense of weightlessness. This wasn't just another day. It was the beginning of something new. Something bigger than he had ever imagined. The next day, Marcus could hardly contain his excitement. He couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Ethan. An internship? At a tech company? This was everything Marcus had dreamed of but never thought was possible. As he sat in his small room later that night, staring at the business card Ethan had given him, it felt surreal. A kid from his neighborhood, about to step into a world that felt so far out of reach. He had heard of companies like Ethan's, big ones that changed the world, but never in his wildest dreams did he imagine he would be working with people who ran those companies. The next morning, he woke up early, his nerves a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He had never been to a real office before, let alone one in the heart of downtown. The company Ethan worked for, Parker Innovations, was located in one of the tallest buildings in the city, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed to touch the sky. Marcus couldn't help but feel intimidated. He hadn't even known how to dress for the occasion, so he wore his best shirt, a pair of clean jeans, and the sneakers he wore every day. When he walked into the lobby of the building, he was almost taken aback. The space was open and sleek, with polished floors, modern art pieces on the walls, and a reception desk that seemed too fancy for someone like him. The receptionist, a well-dressed woman with a friendly smile, greeted him warmly and gave him a visitor's badge. "You must be Marcus," she said. "Mr. Parker is expecting you. Right this way." As they walked down a corridor lined with glass offices, Marcus's heart raced. He had no idea what to expect. Was he even qualified for this kind of job? Was this some kind of mistake? When they reached Ethan's office, the door was open, and Ethan waved him in. "Marcus, good to see you. Come on in, have a seat." Ethan's office was exactly what Marcus had imagined, neat, professional, with a massive view of the city below. Ethan looked just as composed as before, and when he saw Marcus's nervous expression, he chuckled lightly. "Don't worry, kid. You'll get used to it," he said, motioning to the chair across from his desk. "Let's talk about your role here." Marcus sat down, trying to calm his nerves. Ethan went over the basics, his responsibilities, the types of projects he'd be working on, and what he could expect in the first few weeks. It was a lot to take in, but as Ethan spoke, Marcus began to feel more comfortable. This wasn't just some small internship. Ethan had big plans for him. "You'll start with some basic tasks, organizing files, helping with research, things like that," Ethan explained. "But I expect you to ask questions. Don't just do what you're told. Use your brain. I saw something in you, Marcus. You've got potential, but it's going to take more than just doing what's asked of you. It's about thinking for yourself and finding ways to add value." Marcus nodded, feeling a rush of determination. He could do this. He had to do this. For the next few days, Marcus worked hard, diving into the projects he was given. The first few tasks were simple, sorting through spreadsheets, making calls, helping organize meetings. But what stood out to him was the culture of the company. The people didn't just follow instructions. They thought critically, innovated, and challenged each other. It was a place that valued ideas, not just experience. And Marcus had ideas. He had always been the kind of kid who could find solutions to problems, even if it meant thinking outside the box. One afternoon, as he sat in the office working on a data analysis project, he noticed something odd in the numbers. A pattern no one had seen before, a gap in the market that the company hadn't considered. He didn't know if he should speak up. Who was he, just a kid from the neighborhood, to suggest something to these professionals? But Ethan's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk, don't just do what you're told, add value asterisk. Taking a deep breath, Marcus called Ethan over. "Hey, I was looking at this report, and I think there's something here we might be missing." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on." Marcus explained the pattern he had spotted in the data, a new opportunity for the company to tap into an emerging market. Ethan listened carefully, nodding as Marcus spoke. When he finished, there was a long pause. Then Ethan smiled. "You know, I think you're onto something," he said, a note of approval in his voice. "This is good. Keep thinking like this, Marcus. You've got the mind of a problem solver. You're not just doing the job, you're shaping it." The compliment sent a wave of pride through Marcus. He had taken a chance, stepped outside his comfort zone, and it had paid off. This wasn't just an internship anymore. It was his chance to prove himself. As the days passed, Marcus became more and more confident. The tasks grew harder, but so did his resolve. He wasn't just here to watch. He was here to make a difference. And as Ethan had said, he wouldn't regret it. Marcus had just stepped into a new chapter of his life. Weeks passed, and Marcus started to settle into his new role at Parker Innovations. Each day brought new challenges, new problems to solve, and opportunities to prove himself. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened one Friday afternoon. The office was buzzing with energy, as usual. People were rushing around, finishing up tasks, preparing for the weekend. Marcus had been given a more substantial project, analyzing the performance of a new software product the company had launched a few months ago. At first, the numbers seemed good, but as Marcus dug deeper into the data, he began to notice something troubling. The software's engagement rates were slowly dropping, and the company had not yet identified the root cause. It wasn't just a slight dip, it was significant. He stayed late that day, poring over the data, trying to piece together what was happening. His gut told him that something was wrong, something nobody had noticed. By the time the office started to empty, Marcus had an idea. He wasn't completely sure, but he had a hunch that the issue wasn't with the software itself, it was with how it was being marketed. The messaging had shifted in a way that made the product feel less relevant to its core audience. Marcus had no proof yet, but he had a theory that could explain the drop in engagement. He didn't want to just walk away and wait for someone else to find the issue. His instincts told him to speak up, but who was he to challenge a company's strategy? He was just an intern, a kid with barely any experience. Still, Ethan's words echoed in his head. Asterisk, don't just do what you're told. Think for yourself. Bring solutions, not just problems, asterisk. With a deep breath, Marcus went to Ethan's office. The door was slightly ajar, and he could hear the sound of typing inside. Marcus knocked softly before pushing it open. Ethan looked up, surprised to see him. Hey, Marcus, what's up? I think I found something, Marcus said, his heart racing. It's about the software product. The engagement rates are dropping, and I think it has to do with how the marketing's been going. The messaging's changed, and I think it's losing its appeal to the people who originally loved it. Ethan's eyebrows furrowed slightly, clearly intrigued. You've been looking into this. Tell me more. Marcus stepped into the office, feeling the weight of the moment. He explained everything, how the product was marketed heavily toward new users, but the original users who had made it popular weren't being prioritized anymore. The shifts in the messaging, the features that had been pushed to the background. Everything. He wasn't able to present full data yet, but his theory made sense to him, and he was determined to share it. Ethan listened intently, not interrupting. When Marcus finished, Ethan leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together thoughtfully. I've got to admit, Marcus, I didn't see that, he said, his voice low but approving. You've been here for a short time, but you've got a great eye. Let's test it. Over the next few days, Marcus worked alongside the marketing team to analyze the product's messaging. They dug through old reports, compared customer feedback, and examined the performance metrics in detail. Marcus's theory was starting to gain traction. By the end of the week, they had gathered enough data to suggest a shift in the marketing approach. The product's messaging needed to reflect what the users originally loved about it, not what the company thought they wanted. Ethan called a meeting with the senior team. As they discussed the findings, Marcus's heart raced. He was in a room full of professionals who had years of experience on him, but the confidence he had found in himself, in his instincts, kept him steady. When it was time to speak, he didn't hold back. This is what I've been seeing, Marcus said, pointing to the data on the screen. We need to go back to the basics and realign the message with what made people connect with the product in the first place. The room fell silent. Then one of the senior team members nodded. I agree, she said. This is exactly what we need to focus on. Ethan looked at Marcus, a proud smile spreading across his face. You've saved us again, Marcus, he said. This could be a game changer. That moment was a turning point. Marcus realized he wasn't just an intern anymore. He wasn't just filling space or following orders. He was contributing to the company's success in a real way. The feedback from his work was being implemented, and people were taking him seriously. As the week came to a close, Marcus walked out of the office feeling like he belonged there. He knew that with each challenge, he was growing stronger, more capable, and more certain of his place in the world. He wasn't just changing a tire anymore. He was helping to change the future of a company. And that was only the beginning. As the weeks passed, Marcus continued to prove himself in ways he hadn't imagined possible. His confidence grew, not just in his ability to analyze data or solve problems, but in his ability to navigate the complex world of business. Each day, he found new ways to challenge himself, pushing past his self-doubt and learning from every experience. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. One morning, Marcus was given a new assignment by Ethan, something that was going to push him out of his comfort zone even more. Parker Innovations had a new product they were preparing to launch, and they needed someone to manage a small team for the final stages of development. Ethan, recognizing Marcus's growing potential, wanted him to lead the team. It was a big step up for him, and Marcus had to admit he was terrified. Leading a team? He had never been in charge of anyone before. He was used to being the one who followed directions, not the one giving them. But Ethan believed in him, and that belief lit a fire inside Marcus. He didn't want to let Ethan down, or the team, or even himself. He had to rise to the challenge. The first day he walked into the meeting room to meet his team, Marcus felt like a fish out of water. The people sitting around the table were seasoned professionals, most of them older than him and with more experience. He felt small, almost invisible in the face of their expertise. But as they began to discuss the project, Marcus started to find his footing. He asked the right questions, listened carefully, and began to offer suggestions. Slowly, he started to earn their respect. The team was tasked with refining the product, conducting last-minute tests, and ensuring the launch would go smoothly. The work was intense, and the deadlines were tight. Marcus had to make decisions quickly, sometimes without all the information he wanted. There were moments when he questioned himself, when he wasn't sure if he was making the right call. But he pushed through, relying on his instincts and the lessons he had learned in the months since he started at Parker Innovations. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a progress update, Marcus felt the pressure more than ever. There was one issue that had come up, an unexpected bug in the software that could potentially delay the launch. The room was filled with tense voices, people throwing out suggestions, but no one seemed to have a clear solution. It was moments like these that made Marcus feel like an imposter. How was he supposed to solve this? He was just a kid. But then, he remembered something Ethan had told him early on. Asterisk, think for yourself. Don't just wait for a solution. Create it asterisk. With that in mind, Marcus stood up. The room fell silent as he looked around at the team. What if we focus on the root of the problem instead of just fixing the bug? He asked. The bug's just a symptom. What's causing it? What if we tweak the user interface to make sure the bug doesn't even appear in the first place? The team looked at him, surprised at his suggestion. No one had thought of it that way. One of the senior developers, a woman named Carla, spoke up. That's actually not a bad idea. It would require a quick redesign, but it might just work. The rest of the team jumped on board, and they started working together, brainstorming, reworking parts of the interface to eliminate the issue. Marcus stayed calm, guiding the process, taking in input from everyone, and ensuring the team stayed focused. It was a moment of true leadership. He wasn't just managing people, he was collaborating, guiding them toward a solution. By the end of the day, the issue was resolved. The team had worked together seamlessly, and the product was back on track for its launch. As they wrapped up the meeting, Ethan walked into the room with a grin. Marcus, he said, clapping him on the back, you did it. You handled that like a pro. I knew you had it in you. For the first time, Marcus felt like he truly belonged at Parker Innovations. He wasn't just an intern anymore. He was a leader. The team respected him, Ethan trusted him, and he had earned his place among them. As Marcus walked out of the office that evening, his mind raced. He thought about how far he had come, from the kid who had changed a flat tire to the young man leading a team through a critical project. It wasn't just the success of the product that made him proud. It was the fact that he had stepped into his own, that he had grown in ways he had never imagined possible. The journey wasn't over yet. He still had a long way to go, but for the first time, Marcus could see where he was headed, somewhere far beyond his wildest dreams. The launch of the product was a success, a turning point in Marcus' journey at Parker Innovations. The team celebrated with a small office party, but Marcus wasn't focused on the festivities. He couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was just the beginning of something even bigger. As the weeks went by, Ethan continued to challenge him with more responsibilities, pushing Marcus to take on bigger projects, manage larger teams, and make decisions that had real, tangible impacts on the company. Marcus felt the weight of it all, but in a good way. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was excited. Every time he stepped into a new role, every time he solved a new problem, it felt like he was stepping further into the person he was meant to become. But there was one thing Marcus had started to notice, something that gnawed at him. The people around him, the ones who had been there for years, still viewed him as the new kid. Even though he was making significant contributions, the respect he had earned didn't always translate into full acceptance. It came to a head one afternoon during a meeting with a new client. The project was critical to Parker Innovations, a potential deal that could take the company to the next level. Marcus was tasked with leading the presentation alongside some of the senior executives, including Carla, the developer who had been instrumental in the product's recent success. As they sat around the conference table preparing, Marcus noticed the tension in the air. The senior team members seemed a little too eager to take over the discussion. Carla, usually supportive, was quiet, her eyes downcast. Marcus tried to push past it, focusing on the task at hand. He knew the material. He knew the product. He was ready. As the client entered the room and the meeting began, Marcus took the lead, walking through the key points of the project. But as he spoke, he noticed the subtle eye rolls, the quick glances exchanged among the senior team. It was as if they were waiting for him to slip up, to reveal that he wasn't quite as capable as he seemed. His nerves, once calm, now started to fray at the edges. Then, during a critical part of the presentation, Marcus fumbled. He had been explaining a new feature of the software, but his mind went blank for a moment. It wasn't a huge mistake, just a brief pause, a misstep in his flow. But he saw it immediately. Carla's eyes flickered with judgment, and the other executives didn't hide their smirks. For a split second, Marcus felt like the outsider again, the kid who had no business sitting at that table. But then something shifted inside him. He had been here before. He'd stumbled, doubted himself, but he had always come through stronger. And this time, he wasn't going to let the doubt creep in. He took a deep breath and smiled. "Sorry about that," he said, regaining his confidence. "Let me start that part again. It's actually a very important feature, and I want to make sure you understand its potential." He didn't wait for approval from anyone. He simply dove back in, this time with more focus and clarity. He walked the client through the product's capabilities, detailing how it would meet their specific needs. As he spoke, he could see the client's interest peaking. The room slowly began to quiet, and even Carla, who had been quiet up until then, began nodding along. By the end of the meeting, the client was impressed. They signed on the dotted line, agreeing to move forward with the partnership. As the team walked out of the room, Ethan caught Marcus's eye and gave him a nod of approval. "You handled that well," he said. "Don't let anyone make you second-guess yourself. You've earned your place here." Marcus felt a mix of relief and pride. It wasn't just the success of the deal, it was the way he had handled the pressure, the self-doubt, and the judgment. He had pushed through, and that meant more than any victory in the boardroom. But even as the deal was celebrated, Marcus knew this was just another step in his journey. He still had to prove himself, not just to the team, but to himself. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments where he would have to fight for his place. But Marcus had come to realize something important. He wasn't just here to follow orders. He was here to lead, to innovate, and to break through the barriers that had once seemed impossible. The next few months were filled with more challenges, more projects, and more growth. Marcus took on roles that even the senior staff admired. His work ethic, his ideas, and his drive made him an invaluable part of the team. But it wasn't just the technical skills that set him apart. It was his ability to remain focused and composed in the face of adversity, his refusal to let doubt define him. One evening, as he sat in his office reviewing the latest project update, Marcus smiled to himself. He had come a long way from the young boy who had helped a millionaire with a flat tire. That one-chance encounter had changed his life forever, and as he looked ahead, he knew the future was bright, full of endless possibilities that were waiting for him to claim. Months had flown by, and Marcus had come to a new realization. He wasn't just building a career at Parker Innovations, he was shaping his own future. With each passing day, he grew more confident, more capable, and more respected within the company. His innovative ideas were no longer just suggestions, they were being implemented. His leadership was no longer just a hope, it was a reality. But as the praise continued to pour in, Marcus found himself faced with a new, unexpected challenge, the weight of his own success. It started one Monday morning when Ethan called Marcus into his office. The way Ethan looked at him, seriously, but with a hint of excitement, immediately put him on edge. "Marcus, I've got something important to discuss," Ethan said, motioning for him to sit down. "You've done an incredible job here, and you've earned the respect of everyone in this company. That's why I've been talking with the higher-ups about giving you a promotion. We want you to move up to senior management. It's a big step, and I believe you're ready for it." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Senior management? It was everything he had ever dreamed of, but the weight of the responsibility settled in his chest like a rock. Was he ready? There were people in the company who had years of experience, people who had been in the game long before he had ever stepped foot into that office. But here was Ethan, telling him that he had earned this chance. He had worked for this, hadn't he? "I don't know if I'm ready, Ethan," Marcus admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "This is a big jump. What if I can't handle it?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Marcus, you've already handled a lot. You've been leading teams, solving problems, coming up with strategies. You've proven yourself. This isn't about experience. It's about having the right mindset. And you've got it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to take risks and trust your instincts. That's why I believe you're ready." Marcus sat there, processing Ethan's words. The fear and self-doubt he had felt in the past began to creep up again. But this time, something was different. He had proven to himself time and time again that he was capable. He had grown, not just professionally, but personally. He wasn't the same kid who had changed a flat tire for a millionaire. He was a leader, a problem solver, and now, it seemed, the future of Parker Innovations was within his reach. With a deep breath, Marcus stood up. "All right, I'll do it. I'll take the promotion." Ethan smiled, his approval shining through. "Good. I knew you would. You're going to do great things here, Marcus. I have no doubt." The transition into senior management wasn't easy. Marcus was now overseeing a larger team, working on even more complex projects, and dealing with higher expectations. He was no longer just executing ideas. He was generating them, steering the direction of important initiatives, and making decisions that could impact the entire company. He wasn't just working for himself anymore. He was working for the team, the company, and the future he was helping to build. There were moments of doubt, especially in the beginning. It was a big leap, and sometimes Marcus questioned whether he was making the right decisions. But with each challenge, he became more resilient. He found his stride, learned to balance his responsibilities, and built relationships with his team. The pressure didn't feel quite as overwhelming anymore. It felt like a reminder of how far he had come. One day, after a particularly intense meeting where Marcus had just negotiated a deal with a new client, he stood on the rooftop of the building, looking out at the city. The same city he had grown up in, the same streets he had walked as a young boy, unsure of what his future would look like. Now, here he was, standing at the top of the corporate world, a young man who had made something of himself. Marcus thought back to the moment when he had first met Ethan, when a simple act of kindness had changed the course of his life forever. He never could have predicted that helping a millionaire with a flat tire would lead him to this point. But everything, every challenge, and every lesson had been building to this moment. "I did it," Marcus whispered to himself, his voice barely audible in the wind. "I actually did it." It wasn't just about the promotion, the salary increase, or the accolades. It was about the journey, the transformation, and the realization that the world, in all its complexity and opportunity, was his to shape. Marcus had started out with nothing but a dream, and now he was a force to be reckoned with. The future was his, and it was brighter than he had ever imagined. Months passed, and Marcus settled into his new role in senior management. The pressure was intense, but he had learned to manage it. Every challenge felt like a test, and with each success, he built more confidence in his abilities. However, just as he began to feel fully established, the company faced an unexpected crisis. It started with a series of unfortunate events. A competitor released a similar product that gained instant traction, a key partner unexpectedly backed out of an important deal, and several high-level employees resigned, leaving Marcus and his team to pick up the slack. The company's future suddenly seemed uncertain, and the weight of it all fell heavily on Marcus's shoulders. Ethan called him into his office one afternoon. The usual warmth in his eyes was replaced by concern. "Marcus, we're in a tough spot," he said, his voice steady but serious. "Our competitors are gaining ground, and the deals we've been counting on are slipping through our fingers. I need you to step up. You've handled the big projects before, but now it's time for something bigger. You're the future of this company. What do you think we should do? Marcus's mind raced. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. The stakes were much higher now. The company's survival and his own position hung in the balance. He looked at Ethan, the man who had taken a chance on him, and realized that this was the moment he had been preparing for all along. It wasn't just about the next big deal or the next promotion. It was about shaping the company's future in a way that would ensure its survival. I think we need to rethink our approach, Marcus said after a moment of deep thought. We've been so focused on competing with the bigger companies, but maybe we're missing something. What if we went back to the basics, refocused on our core values, and reached out to the customers who've always supported us? Maybe we've gotten too caught up in trying to be like everyone else. Ethan stared at him for a few moments, then nodded slowly. That's bold, Marcus, but I think you're right. We've always been about innovation and personal touch. If we lose that, we lose everything. Let's do it. I want you to lead this shift. With that, Marcus was tasked with leading a complete overhaul of the company's approach. It was going to be a massive undertaking, restructuring the product offerings, revisiting the marketing strategy, and most importantly, reconnecting with their core customer base. The pressure was overwhelming, but Marcus was determined. This was his chance to prove himself, not just to Ethan, but to everyone. He immediately got to work, pulling together a team of trusted colleagues and focusing on the heart of what made the company unique. It wasn't about competing head-to-head with the industry giants. It was about standing out by offering something different, a product that wasn't just useful, but meaningful to the people who used it. He knew it wouldn't be easy, and there were plenty of sleepless nights and difficult conversations ahead, but Marcus felt more driven than ever. One of the first steps was to engage directly with their customers. Marcus wanted to hear from them. What did they love about the products? What did they wish could be improved? He set up focus groups, set out surveys, and organized town hall meetings with customers. The feedback was invaluable. It reminded him of the importance of staying grounded in the people they were serving, rather than just chasing numbers or trends. Next, he worked with the design and marketing teams to reimagine their product line, ensuring it reflected the true essence of the company's vision. It meant pulling back from some of the more flashy, profit-driven ideas and doubling down on authenticity. The team wasn't going to just create products. They were going to create experiences that mattered. Despite the setbacks, Marcus remained focused. Slowly, the results began to show. Customer engagement started to rise again, and sales followed. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but the shift was unmistakable. The company was beginning to find its footing again. Ethan noticed the change, and one day, he called Marcus into his office. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You turned things around. You've led this company through one of its toughest times. You've earned your place, Marcus." Marcus felt a wave of relief and pride wash over him. It wasn't just the success of the company that mattered. It was the way he had handled the pressure, the way he had led with integrity and vision. He had come so far from the young boy who had helped a millionaire with a flat tire. And now, more than ever, Marcus knew that his journey was just beginning.